Hey guys, so summer's winding down, and you know what that means.
School!
And I thought with all that going on, I would talk about something school-related, like, say, a book. George Orwell's 1984. This is one of my all-time favorite books, and if you haven't read it yet, I can guarantee you you're probably going to read it, especially if you're in university or the last few years of high school, because you're almost guaranteed to do this as a novel study, or, just have it as required reading. It's an absolutely fantastic book, one that I think is still relevant to today, even though it was written in 1948, and it's a really well-crafted story with great characters that you just want to learn more about. This is a book that I believe is not taught often very well in classes. In fact, a friend of mine told me about how her teacher was just giving them reading comprehension questions to examine the book. And this is not a book that you can do that with. With this book, you can't just answer questions like, where was Winston at the beginning of chapter 5? What shape is the Ministry of Truth? Just, little details to check if you're reading, because it's more than that. Most of what you're going to hear about this book, whether it be just discussion or analysis of it, is in the political aspect. Winston Smith, the protagonist, lives in an oligarchical society. Oligarchy is basically the few ruling the many. And the society in which Winston lives is very similar to the totalitarian governments of the 1940s, just around World War II. In fact, this book was inspired by the aftermath of World War II. In the world of 1984, there are 3 supercontinents. There is East Asia, Eurasia, and Oceania. I pronounce it Oceania because that's how my English teacher pronounced it, and I think it's a lot easier to say than Oceania, but you can pronounce it however you want. Winston lives in Oceania, in the city of London, which is now not London, England, but London, chief city of Airstrip 1. And everyone middle class or thereabouts is a member of the party, and they all wear these coveralls. And there are basically 3 classes. There's the inner party, who wear black uniforms, and there are not very many of them, and they kind of control things. The outer party, who wear blue coveralls, and they basically do like the government jobs and the clerical jobs. And then there are the proles, and the proles are basically allowed to do what they want because they're so far down in the class system that no one really cares about them. The story of 1984 is about Winston Smith, who in the year of 1984 decides that he's going to rebel against the party. And he does this by exercising free thought, by writing in a journal. He begins to notice that there are a lot of inequities in the society, which is ruled over by this big picture of a man called Big Brother. There are posters of Big Brother everywhere that say, Big Brother is watching you.
Big Brother is watching you.
And basically everyone is expected to behave a certain way, and any deviance from that is considered thought crime, and they are punished for it.
Big Brother's watching you.
Winston meets a woman called Julia, who is also rebelling against the party, and they eventually embark on a love affair as kind of a political blow against the party. And the story basically follows from the aftermath of this affair. Now, among the similarities between communist societies in Germany and Russia post-World War II, such as the rations and the single-party system, Oceanian society also resembles some of the developments in recent history, specifically in the last 10 years. What you will hear often in discussions is talk of the Patriot Act, which was passed in 2001 after the disaster at the World Trade Center. This act was passed by United States Congress in order to combat terrorism in October 2001. The act in and of itself was too broad. The Patriot Act gave the U.S. government almost unilateral access to the telephone, email, financial, and medical records of every citizen effectively. There was no stipulation that the act applied to only those suspected of terrorism. Effectively, any citizen could become subject of the Patriot Act. I think at last count there were 4.2 million CCTV cameras all over the United Kingdom, a portion of which are used to survey the streets to watch out for crime. This has had an effect on only 3% of crimes.
Big Brother's watching you. Big Brother is watching you.
Now, if someone were to be caught by the thought police, who monitor everyone's actions, they would be brought to the Ministry of Love, which isn't what it sounds like. And this is very similar to acts of rendition, which, if you've seen the movie Rendition, is not. Just no. And all of this is what is mainly talked about. What is not so talked about in 1984 is that, at least in my mind, maybe it's because I'm a hopeless romantic, the first 2 parts of the novel are very much a love story. Winston is a dreamer. He's very, very conscious of his dreams, often telling the reader about dreams that he's had, or using them as examples in his life, or he even tells some to Julia. Winston lives very much inside his own head. He's the intellectual half of the relationship, whereas Julia is the physical half. She doesn't really think much before she acts, except to like suss the person out and figure out how to get the way she wants, but other than that, she's very, very physical. Her thing is sex. Yeah, she loves sex. Winston and Julia, together, they kind of go off into their own dream world. They have their own secret hideouts, and they have these romantic little get-togethers. We play house. And on Winston's part, he imagines a life for them in the future, like whether they'd have to be in hiding, he sees her in the future, which I think is really, really sweet. They're kind of like the people that inspired that David Bowie song. You really feel like they're going to take the party down and, you know, just kick some butt in general and just take over the world and bring about a revolution. And it's because of their relationship and their love and gratitude for each other's presence. And it's because of them together as a team, he the intellectual and she the physical. I think it's one of the most underrated love stories in literature. In fact, when 1984 was made into a film in 1984, and they actually shot on some of the actual days in the book, which is really cool, I found it was too dark and dreary. In fact, the All-Movie Guide describes Winston and Julia's relationship in this movie as stoic, and I think it's anything but. When they're alone in their hiding place and living their lives the way they want to, they are the most alive they've ever been. Part of the reason why I think so many people don't really get into 1984 is because the love story part is not really picked up on. Winston and Julia are the only people who really get what's going on. They are the only people with consciousness in this society. And they are the only people able to really feel anything. And they are just so happy when they're together. And it's a really big contrast to just all the dreariness that's around them. And as I see it, the dreariness that stems from 1984 doesn't so much stem from the fact that people know that they're oppressed. It stems from the fact that they don't know, and that they're not experiencing things to their full potential. For all intents and purposes, the society in Oceania and in the rest of the world in 1984 is basically normal. It would look like our society, except with a few minor differences, and those differences creeped up over time. Yeah, sure, there was one big revolution, but with the fervor that everyone had, and their wanting change, they accepted whatever they felt was better and whatever they were told was better. Now, I think one of the key messages in 1984 is this: if you are not an active participant in your government, if you don't vote, if you don't know what's going on, then something like this can happen. If you aren't vigilant and allow power to fall in the hands of someone who will abuse it, then everything that follows will be very hard to reverse. By not exercising your rights as you have them now, you could lose them. So vote, watch the news, speak out.